Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Chet Chats. Today, we're going to be discussing a question that I had from a real good friend of mine, Tony Gregory. Hey, Tony. His question was, are you allowed to block the streets or stand in the streets when doing a protest? Basically, does your First Amendment right to protest give you the ability or the right to block traffic or stand in the streets? And a lot of people are under the misconception that when exercising some type of constitutional right, that it essentially gives you carte blanche to do whatever you want and, essentially disregard other laws that are inconsistent to your exercise of this constitutional right. So the short answer is no, you cannot block traffic while protesting. You cannot commit criminal violations, traffic violations in the course of your protesting and claim a constitutional protection from prosecution. And here's why, okay? So no constitutional amendment is absolute, and that's been well settled ever since the beginning, since the first 10 amendments were ratified into the Bill of Rights, 1791, and then all of constitutional jurisprudence henceforth from the Supreme Court. States, governments are allowed to impose what's called reasonable regulations on the exercise of a constitutional amendment, specifically with regard to protesting and free speech. The Supreme Court has dictated that the government can impose reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. That means they can dictate sort of when you can protest or when, and we'll just call it, I'm going to say protest, but this is referring to speech in general. When you can protest, where you can protest, and sort of the manner in which you can protest. And they have to, they can limit it to avenues that have been traditionally held open for speech and communication. So sidewalks, parks, front steps of county buildings, all these kinds of places have traditionally been used for speech and for protests, and so people are allowed to protest there. For example, when I say time, place, and manner, the government can prohibit you from staging a very loud protest in a residential neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning. It is because they're regulating the time and the place, and to some extent the manner of that protest. Now, one thing you'll notice with any kind of constitutional restriction is that they should never be prohibiting the content of speech. And that's really key, is that any regulation has to be content neutral. So they can't have a certain standard for speech or protest that support the president, but a different standard for speech that opposes the president. It has to be content neutral. And this makes sense because we want people to exercise their freedom of speech. We want to hear, well, at least we should want to hear diverging points of view. And we want people to be able to say whatever they want. We just want the time, the place, and the manner to be appropriate for civilized life and for the free exercise and flow of commerce and that sort of thing. So the government can say, no, you can't go protest in the streets because those are avenues of commerce, and to do that would just completely shut things down. Also, streets have not traditionally been used, or at least highways that are operational have not traditionally been used as, places or conduits, if you will, for speech and protests. No reason, there's absolutely no reason why a protest that's on the street could not be held somewhere more appropriate. So, Tony, the answer to the question is, instead of can you protest in the streets, it's really, can the government prohibit you if they want to? Obviously, a state government or a local government could pass a law that says you're allowed to protest in the street. They could certainly do that. I don't know of any that have. But the question being, can the government prohibit you from protesting in the street and blocking traffic? Yes, absolutely. Anyway, hope that's helpful. Look forward to seeing any kind of comments, hopefully intelligent, substantive comments. like and share and subscribe if you guys find these videos helpful, amusing. Even if it's amusing because of how stupid I am, that's fine. Amusement is amusement. So thanks, guys.